Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Rita Wolfson, and I am the founder of Financial Social Work. Linda Benjamin, our relationship manager, is with us, and Eric Sopp, and he is in charge of all things digital. And of course, most importantly, Rod Griffin, the Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian, the credit reporting agency. Rod, we're so glad to have you with us. You can tell everyone about yourself when I turn this over to you in a few minutes, but you can say a quick hello if you'd like.
Rita, thanks so much. I'm glad to be back, everyone, and thank you for the gracious introduction.
Well, you are most kind to do this, and this is a favorite webinar for us each year because there's so much always happening with credit scoring. So just a little housekeeping. You can check the chat box for messages. Slides aren't shared, they are proprietary, but the recording will be on our website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel within a few days. And as I mentioned, you will receive it via email next week. You can type your questions into the question box and we'll answer as many as time permits. There is no CE for this webinar, just a lot of wonderful, important, current information. And you'll want to stay tuned to the end of the session because for those of you who attended, we are going to offer you a special discount. I'd like to begin our monthly free webinar with our financial social work affirmation. It says, just for today, just for today, I will love myself enough to face my fears, practice self-acceptance, and embrace hope. Silence my inner critic, speak my truth, and make peace with myself and with my past. Just for today, I will give myself permission to eliminate toxic people, beliefs, and behaviors from my life. And just for today, I will prepare for a better tomorrow by healing my relationship with my money and myself today. So that is our financial social work affirmation. So this year we've been starting each webinar with a graphic to engage those of you in the audience. What we are asking you to do is take a look at this picture and share in the answer, well, actually in the question box, what thoughts, ideas it brings up for you. And Linda Benjamin, our relationship manager, does a great job with sharing your comments with the rest of us. Anything happening, Linda?
Well, no, I think our folks are just getting warmed up. Just give us the top of mind, your visceral reaction in the question box. It makes me feel that he is confused.
Good.
Anybody else? In the question box, I think he is probably confused. But I think we can move on to the next slide. I think we have some folks. I don't think that, I'm not sure if this resonates with everyone. Does anyone have any reaction to it?
Well, he is holding credit cards.
You are typing
appropriate.
You are typing in the right place.
Okay, well, we have lots of things to go over. Go ahead, you have one?
No, Go ahead.
Okay, so a little bit about financial social work so that you understand why we do these free monthly webinars with our community. So what it is, what it does, who needs it, when, and why. Financial social work is a behavioral model. It addresses the financial thoughts, feelings, attitudes, beliefs, values, and experiences that drive financial behavior. And that is because until and unless behavior changes, nothing changes. So financial behavior for us means how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. Everyone on this call knows that money is complicated, life is complicated. There is no one or easy solution or fix for either or both. What financial social work endeavors to do is to reduce the overwhelming feelings of stress, anxiety, shame, fear, trauma, all those many things that complicate money, life, and mental health. Financial social work is at the intersection of social work, politics, the economy, gender, racial, social, economic, other able justice, and climate change, certainly mental health, and financial inequity. It is, my computer is flying past me today. It is engaging, empowering, motivational. I don't have to read all those things for you. You probably get what we're about. And why is it needed? It is needed now more than ever for so many reasons, including record inflation, growing homelessness, changing demographics, a warming planet, a shrinking middle class. So what do financial social workers do? They are agents of financial change. They address money and mental health, advocate for marginalized groups, work to heal their own and their clients' relationship with money and self. They create safe, non-judgmental spaces for learning, processing, and talking about money. They help clients hope, heal, and deal with their money and their mental health. There's such a strong connection there. They're dedicated to addressing money problems, stress, anxiety, and trauma, committed to gender, social, and economic justice, and approach money and life from a perspective of healing, acceptance, courage, honesty, and hope. It is about financial behavioral change. It's about healing your relationship with your money and self, growing more successfully, personally, financially, professionally, taking control of your money to gain control of your life, making peace with your money and yourself, understanding there is always financial hope, and all of these other really important components of financial behavioral change. And it does approach money and life from a perspective of healing, acceptance, wellness, transparency, and honesty. It begins with the individual, it spreads to the family, the social environment, the workplace, and the community. All of that healing. And it's not just in this country. We have thousands of graduates across the United States, plus in other countries. So we'll finish with a simple truth. No one chooses to have money problems, but most people do. That's why so many Americans need financial social work. They need trustworthy, reliable professionals with whom to process all things monetary. They need a safe, non-judgmental space where they may talk, learn, and process things about money. And everyone needs someone and somewhere to share their money secrets and questions, the ones they've been hiding from or avoiding all of their lives. They need someone who practices financial social work. And now it gives me great pleasure to turn this over to our guest speaker. Okay, and here it comes, Rod.
All right, can you see my screen, Rita?
Yep, looks
Excellent.
great.
Technology is going to cooperate today.
Yay.
Always a good start. So thank you again for inviting me and having me and for that very nice introduction. And you know, I always enjoy this conversation. I could spend hours. Rita won't let me. Everybody has time and schedules to keep. So what I like to do is a couple of things. First, give you a sense of the agenda, if I can get my slides to advance. I want to do something a little bit different. I want to introduce you to Experian and who we really are beyond just a credit bureau, because people think of us as a credit bureau, and that's just about a quarter of our business. I want to talk about information and data and why it's so important to financial inclusion and what we're doing at Experian, our approach as we look forward to the future, and how we help people achieve financial inclusion and overcome barriers to financial success and having a better relationship with their money. And then I'll give an update on some of the things that are sort of top of mind and have been, were last year and continue to be this year. So I'll give an update on medical collections and where that is. I'll talk a little bit about self-reported data and information, some new things that are coming to your credit files potentially if you choose to. A little bit about how credit scores are changing and what we're seeing in the mortgage space in particular. A quick update on buy now, pay later. A little bit about an important change to annualcreditreport.com. And then kind of something I'm thinking about a lot and that we're seeing in our industry and that you're hearing in the news, and talk about artificial intelligence, what it might mean to all of us, and how it's being developed, and some things to think about. So a lot to cover. So first, about the business of Experian. We are not just a credit bureau. In fact, as I said, that's about a quarter of our business. It's just one of the businesses we have. This gives you a bit of an overview. So when you think of Experian, we're really an information services company. We're a technology company that works with vast amounts of information and data and helps businesses across multiple markets. And you talk about credit reporting. So consumers, we have a direct to consumer business that's more than just getting a credit report or credit monitoring. We actually now are an insurance agency. So we but we can help you find insurance. We work with 40 of the largest insurance providers in the country, and help people find better terms and better rates. We work with credit companies to help people connect with financial services, and also, of course, do credit reporting, credit scoring, help people identify potential fraud and identity theft and help them recover. We work with financial services companies. That's the core sort of credit reporting and scoring component, but we also help with fraud mitigation and recovery. We provide employer verification services. So if you're applying for a job, that employer may want to verify the information in a resume, for example, or an application, to make sure that your identity is accurate. You know, kind of share a story that I'm in Texas, and in Houston, there are chemical plants that could be very dangerous if the wrong people had access to them. So they will use our services to verify the application information to make sure that person is who they're claiming to be. If you are getting a Social Security Administration Social Security report, benefits report, you will go through an Experian identity verification tool. So we do a lot with financial services and identity verification. We have a healthcare information business that actually is focused on healthcare provider cash flow services. So really more kind of in the accounting world, not the consumer information world or patient information world, but also looking at how we may be able to help people connect more efficiently and effectively with their healthcare providers and manage things like appointments with their primary care provider, relationships with specialists that they may be seeing, making sure they know what their insurance covers and what they may need to help them with billing. So looking at healthcare, the healthcare industry, we have an automotive history business that's actually better than the one you all hear about. and that you see on the commercials. We are the National Auto Dealer Association Preferred Report and have been for many years. And you can get an auto check report online, completely different than your credit report, obviously, and make sure that you're getting a quality automobile and a used car. Make sure it's not stolen or been, thinking of the hurricane, not had the title washed because it's been in a flood. So another component to our business, we also are a media and technology company working with cell phone providers, cable television companies and others, and businesses to help them identify who their customers might be and potential new customers might be and reach them effectively. So we're a broad range of businesses, actually experiencing an umbrella company, if you will, for a number of business units that do different things with different kinds of information. Credit reporting is the one that touches all of us the most and that we see. But I think it's important to realize that we're looking at all of that kind of information because we want to make sure that we're helping businesses manage risk, and we want to make sure that we're helping people have their best financial lives and helping people find the right tools and resources and access the right kinds of financial opportunities to help them be more successful. And information is crucial to that in all of the ways that we use it. When we talk about data and information, we see it as enabling financial inclusion. One of the greatest challenges that people have, particularly if they're new consumers, if they're new to the country, if they've had some issues, if they've never had credit before, is accessing the financial marketplace and maybe stuck in, excuse me, things like payday loans or title loans, predatory lending, check cashing programs. And so we have a business we call Clarity Services that's looking at those kinds of organizations and the information associated with the payments being made through them and how we might flip that over and use that information if a person's managing those debts well to demonstrate that they're a better traditional credit risk than their credit history might show so that they can break those cycles. So kind of use the predatory lending information against the predatory lending and help people gain access to lower cost credit, better financial tools, banking relationships. How do we help people with using credit-like information? For example, rent payments. You make a rent payment once a month, kind of like a mortgage payment. Mortgage payments up your credit history. Why shouldn't rent payments as well if you're making them on time? And we study that information very closely. We look at scoring systems like Experian Lift, and there are others in the marketplace that incorporate what you might think of as non-traditional information or FCRA expanded information, so information that isn't traditionally part of a credit report, but that is FCRA compatible, and use that information, and then creating services like Experian Boost that I suspect most of you, if not all of you, have heard of, that enables people to report their own positive information. So self-reported information is a fantastic way, when done right, to help a person demonstrate they are better credit risk and to help businesses find them and bring them on board as customers because they didn't have a clear picture of their overall financial life before. So if we can enable and empower people to report information themselves that isn't being reported, that provides an accurate view of their financial health, that is FCRA compliant, that does not skew risk decisions or scores inappropriately, we think that's going to be a powerful tool for both individuals and consumers. And we're looking for more ways to do that. So it's about helping people with information and actually engaging people today more directly with their own information and empowering them to be part of that process. In the future, we're looking at other kinds of things, and two of the things that we're hearing a lot about right now, for example, are cash flow analysis. So what's a person doing with their checking account, savings account, the money in it? Are they managing it well? Are they using it well? There are some who say that should replace credit reporting. I disagree with that perspective. I think it's two sides of the same coin. I think they're complementary, and you really can't have one without the other and be effective. Lenders look at your cash flow, your financial wherewithal when they check your check stubs, your investments, savings accounts, and we think of it as your ability to repay. So they're doing that already. It's just not automated and incorporated. They check your credit report to determine your propensity to repay. Will you use the money you have to repay the debts that you owe? Just because you have $1 million in cash doesn't necessarily mean you'll use it to pay those debts. So they kind of go hand in hand, and we're looking at how can that data be incorporated more directly? How could that information be additive to credit histories in the future, and how that might help people overcome barriers to financial inclusion and help businesses, lenders, for example, bring more people in as customers and do it safely in terms of risk of loss. So one key component. Another thing we're hearing a lot about are ITINs, individual taxpayer identification numbers. This is a bit of a tricky one. I like to share this because I get asked about it frequently. If you're a new immigrant to the country, for example, you can get an ITIN. People want to know why they can't use an ITIN as an identifier on a credit report. And the reason is that it's not a very good identifier, which sounds kind of curious. But to get an ITIN, you can fill out a form, mail it in to the IRS, and they'll issue you a number. There's very little actual identity verification that happens. In fact, third parties, employers can complete forms on behalf of employees and send them in bulk and get ITINs. So there's very little background and identity verification associated with an ITIN. A person could potentially have multiple ITINs. And so that's the challenge. It simply isn't a very strongly validated individual identifier. Unlike a social security number, in which to get a social security number, you must physically go to a Social Security Administration office and present yourself, along with a number of identifying documents. The application has to go through a verification process, and that Social Security number is issued directly to you as the individual. So it's a much more thorough vetting of an identity, and that's why it makes a strong identifier in a credit report. I would also make it very clear that your credit report isn't just matched to a Social Security number. You can have an ITIN and no Social Security number. You can still have a credit report. We simply wouldn't recognize the ITIN as a valid Social Security number. We do not just match to the Social Security number. Actually had a executive at a large lending institution ask me the other day, how do you transfer a person's credit report from their ITIN to their Social Security number? Well, you don't, because the credit report is not listed under the Social Security number. The Social Security number is just one of many identifiers. We will match to all of the identifiers provided to us. So if a lender opens an account for an individual and they report their name, their address, or their previous addresses, their employer, date of birth, and so on, we will create that credit report using that information, as much of the information as we have available to us. It doesn't have to have a Social Security number. A Social Security number is helpful because it is such a strong individual identifier here in this country. So that's why it's good to have and requested, but not absolutely necessary. The one challenge with an ITIN is if you want to request your credit report, you likely won't be able to get it directly online. We'll probably ask you to send us some additional identifying documentation, like a utility bill that shows your name and your address, that sort of thing, so we can verify you are who you say you are. We want to make sure that we're not disclosing something electronically without first verifying your identity. But that doesn't mean you can't have a credit report. And that's a common thing I hear, and I think it's important to understand how that works, and that just because you don't have a social doesn't mean you cannot have a credit report. So who needs help? When we talk about at Experian, expanding the marketplace and who do we really need to help, we like to think of ourselves, and our aspiration is to be thought of as the Consumers Credit Bureau, the bureau that really puts people first and tries to find ways to help them overcome those challenges. We know there are 28 million credit invisible consumers. We know that communities of color are most adversely affected. More than a quarter are unscorable or credit invisible. We know that about 4 million consumers turn 18 every year. We know that about 20 million, actually more than 20 million consumers are between the ages of 18 and 23. And we know with absolute certainty that more than 30,000 people call us every month and say, I want to create a credit report. How do I get it done? Because I don't have one and I need it. And so we are actively looking for innovative ways to help people access that system, because accessing that system, having a credit report, unlocks the door to lower cost financial services, traditional banking, lower fees, having better rates for things like leasing a new apartment, helps make it easier to secure utility service, to get a cell phone. It's one of the most important financial tools people can have. And so a number of years ago, I'm sure you've all seen Experian Boost. We introduced Experian Boost. Initially, it was utility services, streaming services, and cell phones. We've since expanded that. Rent payments now may be included in Experian Boost. We work with about 1,500 of the largest property management companies in the country, as well as a number of online rent reporting organizations. And so you may be able to have your positive rent payments reported. We have also recently added insurance payments to Experian Boost. So you may potentially be able to have your insurance payments reported. They are very credit-like. A certain amount, a certain date each month, you get a service as a result of that. If you don't pay them, that service ends. And so things that are credit-like, that predict risk, that we've tested and studied across hundreds of thousands or millions of consumers over years before we've introduced Experian Boost. We spent 3 years studying the initial rollout and making sure that the information indicated that a person would be a better credit risk and that the tool would not adversely affect scores in an inappropriate way or skew scores in a way that would increase risk of lending, so it doesn't skew scores upward inappropriately and cause a lender to approve a loan that shouldn't be. What we have seen and shown repeatedly is that with a service like Experian Boost and the way we structure it, because it's positive information only, what we see is that when a person has significant issues, a thin credit file, very short credit history, they've had some payment issues, but they're moving in the right direction, they'll likely see the most significant increases in their scores, typically 13 points on average, and with thin files, scores below 680 on a FICO 8, around 19 points. So not huge jumps, but if a person has had some more recent issues, late payments recently, bankruptcy, things that are more severe and more serious and are not moving in the right direction, Boost won't override that and won't cause scores to go up inappropriately. Likewise, if you have really strong credit scores and you add Experian Boost, you may not see a change at all because that existing credit history is going to be the predominant factor. It's going to offset any benefit that Experian Boost would have. You might see a few points increase, but likely not much. I boosted and didn't see any increase as a result. So, I think that's important to understand. There's been some reports lately about having a service like Experian Boost and consumer reported data creating greater risk for lenders in skewing scores, and that we have shown repeatedly that's not the case. And because the existing credit history determines a lot of the impact as a result of Experian Boost. If you're moving in the right direction, doing the right things, and are just beginning to build, it's going to be more important. If you had issues, it's not going to affect your scores much or at all. The other negative information is going to override it. And if you have really good scores, it's not significant enough to make a difference. It's the existing payment history that's going to be the real determinant of risk. So we continue to look at other kinds of data and how we might add it, what we could add to help people actually empower them to have data reported that's going to demonstrate better credit worthiness when in fact they are a better risk than their credit history might show. And we think that's really important because our credit reporting system is voluntary. It's not mandatory. Lenders do not have to report, businesses do not have to report information at all if they choose not to. And so, you know, if they're not reporting the information, but a person's doing well with their finances, we think a person should get credit where credit is due, which is a horrible pun, but I think true. So empowering people to show their financial health is better than it may seem when it's not being done by others. We think is an important step to take. The other thing to know is that in most cases, if you're not paying those debts well, that aren't being reported, the negative information will come to file, and so that certainly would hurt you and hurt your scores, because you will see collection accounts or other activity that ensures the negative payment behavior is reported. So giving people that chance to report the positive information when it is not, we think is really important. And we continue to look, as I said, for other sorts of information that would fit. Another thing that you may or may not have heard about is something we call Experian Go. It's really a seamless tool. If a person enrolls in our free app, we will check to see if they have a credit report with us. If they do not, we will automatically launch our what we call Go service that will ask them for identifying information, a photo of a government issued ID, a photo of their social security card, and we do require a social security card in this instance, social security number, and then a live selfie, so you can wink or you can smile to show that you are that person, that individual, and we will create what is essentially a blank credit history with just your identifying information. You may hear called credit header data. So you will have your identifying information and then nothing else, because there's nothing to report. If you happen to have a cell phone that you're paying, if you have an apartment that you're leasing and the apartment management company reports, or you are subscribed to Netflix, if you have utility service, you could enroll in Experian Boost and potentially begin to populate that credit report. We've had instances where people have moved from no credit history at all to a FICO 8 score of about 630, 635 in a matter of 15 or 20 minutes. So it gets them on the map. It's not going to result in a fabulous score, but it moves you in the right direction. It makes you visible to the system so that you can then have opportunities to create a better financial life. And again, we do that. There's no cost, it's free, and it's permission based. So just a few quick updates on things that we've been seeing and hearing about over the last year or two. So medical collections, of course, have been a big topic. They're in the news again. We, over the last several years, have removed more than 70% of medical collections proactively from credit reports. We no longer include medical collections that are less than $500. So those have been removed as of last year. And so there are actually very few reports in relation to the overall marketplace. So you have 220 million people with credit histories. Relatively few have medical collections remaining in them. We also hold the collections for a year before we include them to make sure that they're not a billing dispute or an insurance dispute or an error, things like that. So we want to make sure it's really a legitimate collection for an unpaid medical debt. So that's the current state. There are a few states that have now passed laws or are considering laws that would prohibit inclusion of medical collections. The CFPB has also proposed a rule to remove all medical collections. We don't know yet if those will come to fruition. If they do, we'll remove them. I suspect that that will happen. I'm not sure when, probably the next year or two. But I think the majority of medical collections have already been removed, and probably the rest will be at some time will be at some point in the not too distant future. Just looking at where they are at this point. Buy now, pay later is always interesting, and it's been a very eventful year in our world, especially at Experian, around buy now, pay later. Just so you know, if you're not familiar with buy now, pay later, they are often called pay in 4 loans, and that's the specific type of BNPL that we look at or have been looking at. They are sort of the modern version of installment or of layaway. So you can, when you go to purchase an item, it may say, would you like to sign up for a pay in 4 or 4 payments over a specific period of time? That's buy now, pay later. You get the item and then you make 4 separate payments. Typically they say interest free over a period of 4 to 6 weeks. And you can do that with almost anything today. The challenge right now is that, or was, that buy now, pay later was not visible anywhere. It wasn't reported in credit reports. There was no reporting in other kinds of databases. So a person, if they purchased a pair of shoes for a couple of $100s and they wanted to make those payments, 4 payments over 4 weeks of my math will go bad here, $50 a month or $50 a week, they could do that. And that would spread their payments, help them manage that purchase better. The problem is that what the research has shown is that if a person has 1 buy now, pay later loan, they likely have 5 or more. So that $200 suddenly becomes $1,000 or more. And the size of BNPL loans has grown. It was for things like clothing purchases, shoes. Now I know that you can purchase, for example, a pellet grill that's $1,200 on a buy now, pay later loan. So the debts are getting larger. That creates difficulties because people may have substantial debt that doesn't show anywhere, and then be applying for other kinds of more traditional loans, credit cards, car loans, installment loans, and their ability to repay that debt may not be as good as it seems based on the information that's available. In fact, they may not be able to manage them at all because they have substantial buy now, pay later debt. They do something called debt stacking with buy now, pay later loans. They stack one after the other. And so could take on significant debt that's not seen, and so creates risk. As a result, there were a number of organizations and groups, the CFPB and other regulatory agencies, calling for buy now, pay later loans to be included in credit reports. We initially pushed back on that because they're not really traditional credit. The problem is with traditional credit reporting, loans are reported and payments are reported once a month, typically over a period of months or years. Because buy now, pay later loans are paid within 4 payments, often 4 weeks within a month, the only evidence of a buy now, pay later loan that might appear in a credit report could be an inquiry. If they checked your credit report, and that's a big if, they checked your credit report before issuing the loan. It would be paid off before the end of the month, and so there wouldn't be a payment to report. So the question became, how do we include that in a traditional credit report so that it's meaningful but doesn't adversely affect the consumer? Because the other challenge is an inquiry by itself is typically a negative indicator for a credit score. It's very small, but still negative. Because buy now, pay later loans are paid off within 4 payments, there wouldn't be any positive payment information showing in the credit report because there would be no payments reported. And so what we found was that in almost every instance, a buy now, pay later loan, even if it was paid as agreed, would negatively affect the consumer's credit scores. We don't think that's right. So we don't want that to happen. So what we did was work with Apple, the computer people, and they had something called Apple Pay Later, which is a BNPL pay in 4 service. And they agreed to report to us. They were going to be the first to report. And we were going to include those buy now, pay later loans in the credit history. The way we were going to do it was to include the buy now, pay later loan, but not initially, not show it to a lender. We wanted to make sure it was appearing properly and the consumer could see it. As we got critical mass and others reported, we would have rolled it out to lenders so they would see them as well. And we were not going to include buy now, pay later information in credit score calculations. So you would see it on the credit report, but it would not affect credit scores because scores aren't equipped to process it correctly. And so we were not going to include in credit scores. So we would give visibility to the debt, but let the lender or others determine the risk that represented and not skew credit reports inappropriately, especially if the person was paying those debts as agreed. Before Apple reported, we actually launched, we're going to start reporting in April. Just before they started to report, they announced that they were discontinuing their Apple Pay Later program. And so there are no BNPL loans that I'm aware of being reported currently, or if there are very few, and not from Apple. So so BNPL is still largely invisible. It's still the wild, wild west of lending. We don't know exactly what it means. So when you talk about regulation, the question was, is it good credit or bad credit or no credit? What is it? CFPB has now issued a proposed rule that would require that BNPL be treated like revolving debt, like a credit card. There's a lot of debate about that. The BNPL providers in particular are saying we're not like credit cards, we're not revolving debt. Some are not. There's no consistency in the buy now, pay later world in terms of how those loans are issued or structured. And so it's still largely unknown. We're waiting to see and still working on how we make sure that that information is visible in some way, but we haven't solved that problem yet. So it's a really interesting thing to watch. Just one quick thing about the centralized report. You can get a free credit report now once a week through annualcreditreport.com from each of the 3 bureaus. The law says once a year. We as an industry have agreed to make permanent a free credit report once a week. So you can get, in theory, 156 free reports a year. So there's no reason for anyone to pay for a credit report so far as I can tell. If you exhaust all of the legal rights to free reports, you would pay $13.75, I think. But I haven't heard of anyone paying for a report for about 7 or 8 years at least. So no reason not to get a free report. You can enroll in our free monitoring services. We'll give you a free report once a month and a free score. You can get a free report through annualcreditreport.com and others. So don't hesitate to get a report. The big myth, as you know, is that people worry that it will affect their credit scores. It will not. You can get your own credit report as often as you like. It will not affect credit scores in any way. So please get your credit report. And then one last thing to touch on that I think is really interesting and could be world changing over a fairly short period of time, and that's artificial intelligence. We are, over the last 2 years with the advent of ChatGPT and Jasper, who's a competitor, and I kind of tongue-in-cheek only halfway say is Jasper the Terminator's name if you watch the movie. I think that's his name. But artificial intelligence is now all the rage, and where everybody's involved. It's incredibly powerful, but it's not new. We've been using artificial intelligence of a different sort, not generative AI, which is what ChatGPT is, where you input information, you interact with it directly, but rather things like neural networks that are very good at identifying, recognizing, and responding to patterns of behavior that could, for example, indicate fraud activity. So when your fraud division, you hear from your fraud division at your bank, they may be using an AI that's identifying a fraud pattern, and that's why they're contacting you. So that's the behind the scenes kind of AI. And now it's very much forward facing, and the potential is enormous. Some compare it to the Industrial Revolution. The head of our artificial intelligence group and division, actually, I was in a meeting and he said, well, it's kind of more like the Manhattan Project. And I raised my hand and I said, but that's the nuclear bomb, right? And maybe we should choose a different analogy, because that could bring peace to the world or it could destroy us all. And we're not sure, and we aren't sure at this point exactly what AI will do. It has enormous potential for good. It means for us better data accuracy, faster risk analysis, greater access to financial services, because it can more finitely determine risk patterns and identify people who should be approved who may not be now. It could reduce cost of credit because it reduces losses to fraud. It reduces fraud, identifies it faster, creates improved customer service, which is where most of the AI work is right now. It's about chatbots replacing those decision trees with a more natural interaction that's more precise and personal. Increased productivity, reduces workloads, creates new economic opportunities. No kidding, my CEO, I've been with Experian 27 years, we've been doing education, and she said, have you created an AI of you yet? And what? No. I said, so you want a Rod bot that somehow gets the information that's in my head into a chat kind of function. So I asked my boss, how much will I get paid for that? And if I retire and you're still using my name, image, and likeness, do I get paid for it? And he said, well, let's not create it yet. So that didn't work too well. This picture on the right, I was at the University of Arizona and talking to a class of financial students with a personal finance major. And I asked them, actually, I was walking to the class and I saw this little thing going down the sidewalk on the other side of the street. And it almost ran off the curb, it corrected itself, and then it worked its way around a light pole. And that's interesting. And went by the student union, and they're streaming out of the student union. And I asked the class, when we look at jobs, what jobs do you think are most at risk as a result of AI? And they said in one voice instantly, food delivery workers. These have replaced the student food delivery jobs in their student union. You can place an order by phone and they will put the lunch order in, or even orders, I guess, from the bookstore in the union, wherever, and goes in there with a code, it locks, and off it goes and goes to the coordinates you send it or gave it. I was going to cross the street in front of one and it stopped and waited for me. It was kind of freaky. It's like Wall-E. But they've replaced all of their food workers with these robots. And so job replacement is real. And that's the thing that we have to think about with AI. And I stress with our people and our engineers, we need to think about it and listen to the way we talk about it. We know that AI has potential, equally potential, large potential for harm. Things like identity theft, deep fake frauds, financial frauds, looking like an individual, a job loss. Hey, the Rod bot, what does that mean for me? I don't know. Growing financial wealth gaps. If you use AI and you have wealth, it's going to be great. If not, what happens? And so there's tremendous risk as well if we don't manage it properly. The question is, can we keep pace? Because it's evolving extraordinarily rapidly. It's already capable of writing and speaking, and now video, online video production that will fool the best of us. Even when we're looking for it, you will be talking to someone you think is a close relative, and it will not be real, and you won't be able to tell. So really interesting. I'm a word person, and when we talk about AI today, we use words like it or they or them or he or she, or give them names like Jasper. They are learning systems. When I asked how they work, they say, well, they're just predicting the next best word when you're trying to communicate with them. I said, that's how my toddler learned to speak. What happens when they say, no, I don't want to do this anymore? And I literally asked that question, and they were stumped. So we just ask it to do different things. We set the parameters differently. The reality is we don't exactly know how they work internally once they start learning. We are keeping them in what we call walled gardens, and keeping is the key word. Walled gardens is a nice word for a cage. We're concerned. We don't want them to have access to more data than we give them, and want to control that. So if we're controlling it, we're keeping them in a cage. What's that tell you? We're a little afraid, and that's a good thing. Within 2 weeks of initiating our first AI, we were on a call for an update with the engineers creating it, and they said, it's doing great, giving really good answers, but it started to hallucinate some responses. And at which point I said, what do you mean by hallucinate? Because when a human hallucinates, that's generally not a good thing. And it's making them up, they said. It's trying to please us. Well, that's another very human characteristic. So we need to think about carefully what we're saying, how we're programming them. English is the programming language, which means we ask them to do things and then they do, but they clearly try to find ways around it if they can't quite do what you ask. So you have to revise. Interesting world to be in. What jobs are most likely to be impacted? Most people start immediately with blue collar kinds of work, and I think that's actually the opposite. We as communicators, technology specialists, our jobs will be most at risk, but it can affect all of us. Think about cab drivers or Uber drivers and self-driving cars. That's AI. So we need to think carefully about it, and it's really a fascinating conversation. I think it's a lot of fun to talk about and important to think about, that could do immensely wonderful things for our society if we manage it well. And with that, there's just a few resources. Happy to share those and happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, Rod, I'm going to go ahead and take back the presentation so that I can finish up and we can get to Q&A, because I know we have questions. So before that, I like to close with a few memorable thoughts for you to take with you. And that's, no one chooses to have money problems, but most people do. No one can or needs to know everything about money, but everyone needs to know certain things about money. If we want to stop raising generation after generation of financially illiterate people, we need to do better at teaching our young people and giving them better financial literacy. We know there's a strong connection between money and mental health. We have to stay aware of that when we're creating safe spaces for clients to think, talk, and process money. There is a strong relationship between finances and suicide. We should never allow debt to be a death sentence. We must always choose life. Healing your relationship with yourself takes time, honesty, less self-criticism, and more self-love. That's what financial social work is about. And when we talk about money, we're talking about safety, security. We're really talking about power, because those who have the money have the power. We're about to give you the code for a discount on all of our products over the next few days. We hope to see you back here for financial mapping, the many benefits of financial geograms, personally and professionally. And then that's October. No, that's September. And October is client-centric strategies for managing holiday spending and stress. We have a client financial wellness magazine that you can learn more about on our financial social work website. We have a financial social work directory you can list in indefinitely. We have a partner program, and social workers and others earn hundreds of dollars from our partner program. We also have the FSW Collaborative. These are graduates of financial social work who love the work and want to spread the word. And that's fswcollaborative.com. And they are on social media, and they schedule several meetings a month where you can do networking, learn and be trained, meet others working with similar populations. It is for our students and graduates, but once a month they do host a public open house that you could attend. Our certification includes 20 CEUs from National NASW. It includes a lifetime membership in our directory and in the FSW Collaborative. So our discount code for those of you who have stayed with us is 15% off everything on the website. And that code is webinar 2024-08. It is valid through August 12th at midnight. So, Linda, do we have questions? Maybe we can take at least a few.
Yes, we can get to a few. And we typically race through this part of the webinar. And I don't want to forget to say thank you to Rod. There are many thank yous that are coming in from the folks who have been on the other end of this information. A couple of questions. One, I've read about credit scores and race. If there are no racial identifiers on a credit report, where does that statistic come from, Rod?
I don't know. I mean, and that's one of the things that we talk about and have for a long time. That credit scores actually make decisions objective. The way I kind of discuss it is that if you think back prior to credit scores, you would walk into a lender and they could look at you and say, nope, not giving you a loan. Didn't have to give you a reason, didn't have to justify. It might be because they didn't like your dad. They might agree to give you a loan because they like your dad, didn't like your brother, didn't like the color of your skin. I actually kind of personal experience in my first experience with credit. I was buying a motorcycle and applied for a loan in a little town, and the banker said, and this is where scores come in, sort of tangentially. Scores remove those personal biases, and if you are managing your credit well, you can demonstrate that you should be approved regardless of any personal perspective, right? And so it makes it objective, not subjective. The banker didn't like motorcycles. He went back in the back when I applied, was gone like 20 minutes, came back and said, well, your credit's good. I have to give you that loan. That bike will probably kill you. Didn't, and obviously. And I reminded him that I was a reporter in that town, that he had just had a wreck in his little MG and wrapped around a telephone pole, and the motorcycle I was buying was about the same size as that car. But that's the benefit of scores, is that it's looking at information objectively. It's far better. It's not perfect, but it's far better than having no objective approach at all. And in fact, another thing that's important to know is that regulatory agencies use credit reports and scores to identify and respond to community lending regulation and fairness in lending. So, I think some of that perspective, some of that, that statement may be from the fact that communities of color have lower levels of credit, lower credit scores. And I think there are lots of reasons that's the case. I think that scores are probably the indicator of that, not the cause. And sometimes we confuse an indicator with a cause. It's kind of the messenger that there are problems that need to be addressed around access, problems that need to be addressed about availability of banking in those communities, problems that need to be addressed about education and financial education in those communities to help people be more successful and to help address those problems. And scores may be the indicator that there's a problem. And I think that's sometimes what we confuse. That's kind of my perspective. They're not perfect, certainly.
Thank you.
One more, Lynn.
The last time I checked, the world was not perfect. Is Experian Boost free?
Yes, it's free and permission-based. So you go to Experian.com/boost and you go through that process. You give us permission to check the bank account, so checking account, savings account, credit card that you use to pay a particular bill with each month to capture that payment. We'll then go back as much as 24 months. If there's 2 years of payments we can find for that particular payment, so your cell phone bill, we'll capture that and enter it as an account in your credit report with 2 years of payment history, and it's all positive. And we'll give you a free score at the same time and a free report when you start, and then another score when you finish and report. And if the score goes down, you can tell us, I don't really want to do this, or you might say, I want to stay on it. I think it'll help over time. If you decide you don't want to, you can tell us to stop, and we will, and we'll take that information off the report.
It's 3:04. Thank you to everybody who stayed with us. That's all the time that we have. Thank you.
If there are other questions, can I interject? If there are other questions, if you want to send them to me, I'll be happy to get answers back for you.
Rod, hold on one second. We did have a question about the last slide with the resources.
Uh-huh.
Could you just give folks the channel that you'd like them to contact you, your email, and anyone that's left can either write it down or see it on the slides next week?
Yeah, so my email is rod.griffin, rod.griffin @experian.com.
Beautiful.
Rod, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much again and again. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a safe few weeks, and we hope to see you back here next month. Bye now.